Welcome to the Old Lumens channel again. I'm going to talk about, I'm going to do a series of videos here talking about the ZY-T08 mod. We've got these things for a group buy, and we're going to do a little modding with them. This is the aluminum pill that goes up inside the head, and top side, of course, is where the star sits and the LED, and then there's a shelf in here where the driver sits. We're going to be doing maybe 2 or 3 different little mods with this thing, so to give everybody some ideas. But this one I'm going to do with an MT-G2 LED. So, and I'm probably going to push it to a 10 amp driver. This one is being done for another member. He's purchased all the stuff, and so I'm going to assemble it, and then it's going to go to him. But with trying to run 10 amps, I mean that's really a little too much, you know, with this light. Even if you look at, hang on a second here. Even if you look at the head and see that, yeah, there's a bunch of large ribs here, and that coincides with the pill, you know. So you do have some thickness there, and you do have some cooling, but overall the head is very light. There's not a lot of mass. When you're going to be pushing 10 amps through an LED like this MT-G2, it's going to create an excessive amount of heat very rapidly. You're not going to take it away fast enough. It's going to overheat. No matter what I do with this, it's going to overheat. Okay, so it's not going to be a long run kind of thing. And the other thing about it is too, you know, with two 18650s, I don't care what you're doing with them. You're not going to put out 10 amps very long, you know. So that's the only saving grace, is the batteries are going to go, you know, real quick. And but what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to put some more mass in. This pill is fairly thick. For an aluminum pill, it's fairly thick. It has a lot of threads, a large fine threaded section to go up inside the head. Okay, so with some thermal paste in there, in between in the threads, to make a better connection, it'll make good contact. Now, there's one area where it doesn't make good contact, and that is right at the end of the head here. In this section right here, this goes in and almost touches against the head. Okay, and so when it goes in there, you know, it almost touches again, but there's a blank spot here. It's going to be dead airspace. I don't know if I'm going to mess with it. I mean, there's a couple things you could do. You could wrap a piece of copper around there. You could do some copper tape and wrap in there to sort of fill it in, you know, but I don't know if I'll really do anything with it. The pill is hollow. Most all these pills are hollow. And what I'm going to do to add a little bit of mass is I'm going to fill that pill up, you know, and have something in behind the LED. Now, this is an oddball size. Okay, I mean, it's not like it's. I'm sure it's metric, and you know, all the stuff I got, all my copper discs and everything else, are all going to be regular U.S. measurement. This is like a 1 inch. This is brass, but it's like a 1 inch disc, and it's loose inside of there. This is more like about 1 1/8 inches. So it's possible, and I really would like to play around with that, but I don't have any. It's possible you could take a 1 inch copper pipe coupling, and it might fit right in, or you might have to not do too much with it. But the only thing I have is I have some 1 1/4 pipe couplings, and I've cut a piece off of this one and split it, and I'll heat it, and then I'll you know, continue to cut down on it until I get it to fit inside of here. When I do that, then the 1 inch, this 1 inch diameter is just about the size of that star opening here for the shelf, okay, for where the star sits. Just about a perfect fit, not absolutely perfect, but real close. So I have a piece of flat copper plate, okay, and I'll cut myself a circle, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this section of aluminum right here. And then when I put the plug in together, it'll go up inside here and be a solid mass that sits right up, and so you have a copper shelf there for the LED to sit on. And I'll use a copper star for the LED too. Now to fill it in, because this is just how, you know, this would still be hollow, even with a piece in there around it, it's still going to be hollow. This is not the optimum thing to do. The optimum thing to do might be to find a piece of copper rod or a piece of aluminum rod even, and have it machined to fit tight, you know, super tight in it. But I don't have those options. So this is copper shot, okay? I get this copper shot from eBay. It's pretty cheap considering, because it's just chopped up copper, okay? Most of it is copper wire. Copper wire that's been chopped up, and they sell it by the bag, you know, by the pound or whatever. And what I will do is when I make this hollow insert, I'll put it in, and then I'll fill it with copper shot, and I'll use copper shot and solder. I'll run solder in there to make a complete solid piece. It's not the optimum thing, okay? It's better than air. The whole idea to me is, you know, this is all dead airspace. It's not doing a doggone thing, and we know, you know, or I know, that there's not enough mass in this whole head and everything to do a lot. So I'm putting some mass that will be underneath the LED, so it has, you know, some heat transfer into that, and then also as that mass sits in there, it gives a larger area of heat transfer out through the aluminum and out through the fins. So that's my thought. Now, in reality, can I prove that? No, I'm not scientific enough to be able to give you formulas and say, yeah, this is going to help, or no, it's not going to help. For the purpose of just modding this with like an XML2, I would say this is thick enough that you could probably do 4 to 5 amps, no problem. Just use the hollow pill. Use a copper star for the LED, mount it on the pill, put in your driver, put it together, and go, you know, up to about 5 amps, all right? After that, I think that the added mass is going to help. That's a personal opinion. I'm not going to say that this is going to help. I'm going to say that's my personal feeling on it from what I've seen over the times, you know, over the years. But that's, I can't quantify that with science, okay? Anyways, that's what I'm going to do, and I'll be working through that in stages here and sort of show you how I do it, just so you get an idea of one way to make a plug to fill a hollow pill. Okay, first thing is this copper that I'm using. This, as I said, this was a 1 1/4 inch copper coupling that I split, and I cut it short. You know, the coupling is longer than that. But these are rigid, okay? And I need it to be soft for me to be able to work with it, so the easiest way to soften copper is to heat it. And that's what I'm doing. I've got my little torch here, and I'm going to heat this copper until once I let off it, it turns black. It leaves sort of like a black residue and a black film all over it. When you're looking at it, you can sort of, I can't say that I'm heating it red hot. I'm not heating red hot because my little torch will not do red hot. Okay, so I'm just trying to heat, and as you can see, it discolors the minute I take the heat off it. But I'm going to heat all the way around this thing, and then we'll get to a point where I want it to be. It'll sort of turn black color, and I know that that'll be soft enough for me to be able to mold this by hand. Okay. So I'm just working around the whole thing and heating. And you can see the discoloration on it. You can see that it's sort of turned a grayish or a darkish brown color, and I'm going to try to get it to where it turns to a black color. I'm just using, for my fire brick, I'm just using a brick out of Home Depot, one of those ones for like a patio and that kind of thing. Works great. I mean, it doesn't absorb a lot of heat, so the heat stays in the copper. I use it for heating a lot of objects because it's still cool. It just doesn't take in heat very much at all. It just keeps the heat in what you're working on, and works real good for it. I do a lot of soldering on it because solder won't stick to it either. And so I'm probably hot enough that this will be soft. And you can see it's sort of a black color to it. It's a film, it's a residue from heating. And I'll, here in a minute, I'll show you how soft it is. Okay, so I think this is cool enough now that I can sort of show you that this now is very soft. Say a couple fingers and I can shape this piece really easily. That's the purpose. And you can see the stuff that flakes off, and you can see the discoloration on that copper. And you can clean it all off with sandpaper and steel wool, but that'll all come off and the copper will come out shiny just like it was before. But now this is real soft, and I can form it the way I want to fit it inside of here, and then cut it to shape. Easier to cut, easier to form. It's just I do that a lot with copper because copper is fairly difficult, but when you soften it like that, it's really easy to work with. So that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to make that fit down inside of here now. So, and to show you how I'm going to shape this and get it to fit inside of here, I've got a socket that's just about the same size as the ID of that, a little bit larger. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to work this copper and get it to form over top of that. Now, I got 2 layers here, so I know I need to cut some more, and I'm just going to continue to cut off small pieces of this with a hacksaw until it gets to the same diameter as here. Okay, so it fits tight, and I can use this to roll it in the shape I want. Then I'm going to be real close to here, and I'm just going to have to shave a little more off to make it fit inside of here. So I've been cutting pieces off with a hacksaw, and just little thin strips off this copper, and I've been rolling it on that socket so that it forms a fairly round shape. And I'm going to try to fit, I'm getting to where I can fit it into this pill. Okay, I have some more cutting to do. I'll be doing the same thing and cutting smaller and smaller strips on it until I get it to where it's a good snug fit inside of there, hopefully. Okay, so I've been working on this, and I've got the copper to where it looks like it's going to fit in there. I've just been doing progressively smaller strips of copper, and you can see if you get really good with a hacksaw, you can get some pretty thin strips of copper cut off. And so I've gotten it to where it just about touches, not perfect. I mean, it's not. I'm never going to get it perfect that way, but just about touches, and it's pretty snug down in there. So I'm just about set for the base section. I still have to make a top piece yet, which means I'll have to cut a disc, and then I have to open this up, and I'll open that up with the Dremel tool. Okay, as far as cutting the disc goes, I've just used taken a pencil and marked that brass disc on this piece of copper, and then I'm going to start by cutting as close as I can to the circle and cutting out the square with a pair of metal shears, heavy metal shears. And once I do that, and it's still pretty tough because you're talking 50 thou thick copper, even though it's been softened. Then I'll start cutting the corners, okay? Okay, so that makes it sort of an octagon size, and then I can trim even more if I want to, you know, here and there, and try to trim some more with it and cut those corners again and get it to where it's almost round, you know. And I'll work it around that way and get it to where it's almost round, and then what I'll probably do is either use a Dremel or a file to follow that line around to try to make as close to a perfect circle as I can. And when I talk about using a file, I'm using a very coarse bastard file, okay? Because I want to get a lot of material off it as quick as I can rather than spend a lot of time roughing it out. So I'll use that, and I'll go straight across the copper. And it'll give you an idea anyways. I'm just following that line around, that pencil line around, to try to get close to a circle. Okay, so now I've got it a little closer to the form of a circle, and I have a lot of junk here from filing, so I'm going to clean that edge off with some sandpaper, and probably both edges. Then I'm going to try to flatten it out a little bit with my hammer and a piece of wood. Then I'll remark it again and go one more time around, and just removing that copper that's on the edge there that's been rolled over from filing. And I'll use a finer file to get closer to what I want. I'll show you that here in a minute, but once I get this rough edge off all the way around with the sandpaper, then I can flatten this thing back out again. Alright, I'll show that here. Okay, so now I've switched to, I've got the piece flat again and put the brass up against it again to mark it, and I've marked it with a magic marker this time to get me a little bit of a darker mark, and also to make sure that I get right to the edge of that brass, so I get exactly where I want, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove all of that black to where basically there's none left, and it should fit down inside of here. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do with a finer file. I'm going to do it in the same manner with a finer file, and then then my sandpaper pad to get the final edge of it. So. Okay, I'm back at it again with this disc, and I've managed to get it to where it's a tight fit where the LED would go into, and I'm in the process of removing the original shelf. The biggest drill I have is a 1/2 inch, so I've drilled up to a 1/2 inch, and then I'll be using a Dremel tool to get most of the rest of the way. When I get really close, I'll probably get the drill press out and use a Dremel bit on it, where I can work on it and get some fine work and, you know, get it right to the edge without cutting too far. So that's what I'm in the process of now. Okay, so I've used the Dremel tool to cut most of the center away, and then I'm going to use the drill press with a Dremel tool bit on it to do the rest of it. And I've kind of learned the hard way that to use leather gloves after chopping my hands up a couple, 2-3 times, because I never make a jig. Everything is different, so I just never make a jig for it. So I do it by holding it by hand and moving the part around, and that's not really the safest thing in the world to do, or the best thing, but it's what I do. So anyways, now I'm going to finish off with the drill press to try to get this down smooth and so that that copper disc will fit inside. Okay, so I've hit it with the Dremel in the drill press, and there's still a little bit of a lip in there left, and now I'm going to use a sanding disc so I don't cut too much away. I just want it to be flush. So I'll use a sanding disc to go ahead and finish off that little bit of an edge. Okay, so I've gotten the copper insert shelf replacement in there, got my copper in the bottom, and now I have a ring of solder. I'm using 6040 rosin core solder, the thicker stuff, 062. Now I'm going to go ahead and start heating, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat enough to lay that solder in there and try to get the top piece soldered to the bottom piece. Then I'm going to start adding in some copper shot, and I'll show you how I do that in a minute. Alright, so now I've got the bottom layer of solder in there, okay, and I'm setting this on top of a socket just to keep from that shelf just sinking right out and falling out, and to help keep the solder in. And I'm going to take a little bit of the copper shot, and I'm not going to fill it up with copper shot. I've discovered that what you need to do, or what I need to do, is to pour some in the bottom, you know, a layer of it, you know, just so it sort of covers the bottom, not fill it up. And I'm going to wear my glove because it's a little warm. Just put some in the bottom, and a small layer, and then lay some solder into it. And what I usually do is I either drip solder or chop some solder up. I'll either chop it up with a pair of clippers, or I'll just drip it in by heating with a torch and running the solder under it and letting the solder just drip into the copper until I get a bunch of it dripped in there, and it sort of drips and just drips right out, you know, covers up that copper shot. And the reason I've been doing that is because, you know, I've already soldered the plate in the way I want it, but if I heat everything up super hot, you know, to melt everything just by heating it up until the solder will melt on its own, then it tends to just run out or drool out. So I'll put some solder in there first, and then I'll heat just enough to let it melt and let it settle in, and then I'll do another layer and another layer and another layer until I get it to where I want it. So that's what I'll be doing here, and I'm not going to go ahead and show it for, you know, any more than it's worth, which is right there. So okay, so basically that's about it. I have not filled it full because I still have to put a driver in there, and I don't want to have, you know, I want to have enough room to be able to get the driver in there. You can see the solder laying in there. You can see a lot of black stuff too. That's really the rosin flux. And what I'll do is I'll clean that out with alcohol afterwards, because alcohol will pretty much dissolve that rosin flux away. And that and a little steel wool, and I'll clean that all up nice and shiny. But that's pretty much how it is. It's just one way to do it. There's a ton of different ways to do it. I mean, you know, if you don't have the tools to do this, then, you know, you might want to try to find some, you know, try a 1-inch copper fitting, and then fill that up with some other pieces of copper fittings until you get it full. Or you can try just getting some copper discs and put a few of them in there. You could just use a piece of aluminum rod if you can find the right diameter. You know, whatever works, or, you know, worst comes to worst, you just, you know, run it at 4 amps or so, and leave it bare pill just like it is. You know, it'll still work. But if you're going for 6, 8, 10 amps, something like that, you need to have, I think, you need to have a little bit of mass in there to give it a little bit of run time before it just gets too hot. So that's my thought on it, and that's my video on how I fill up a pill. Thanks for watching.